All right, time to discuss one of the worst mothers in movie history. Well, that's kind of really kind of a clickbait, but nonetheless, I'm still discussing. Many are already familiar with the John Singleton film Baby Boy, starring Tyrese and Taraji P Henson, focusing on the topic of the infantilization of black men, but only slightly discussing the single black mothers that create these brand of men. And make no mistake, Jody, the main character, everything he does is a result of his terrible mom. The movie doesn't necessarily portray the character of Jody's mom as a bad person or even a bad parent. She's usually portrayed as the voice of reason and a mediator for Jody and Yvette. And as also as a tool to show how childish Jody is, but never addresses what she's done to make him like this or her own shortcomings as a parent. The B-side story revolves around Jody, his mom, and her boyfriend Melvin. Melvin is a retired convict slash thug. When Jody first sees Melvin, he's in a wife beater, I'm just saying, with a 187 tattoo. Seems like a nice gentleman. At first, you can tell Jody isn't happy about it because who would be? But he doesn't really trip off it. And I want to say this, the story tries to paint Jody like he doesn't want his mom to date and he just wants her for himself, which isn't true. He doesn't care if his mama dates. He just doesn't want her dating killers for obvious reasons. But we'll get more into why Jody really just doesn't like killers or thugs. But really, who does? We see Jody's mom, Juanita, I'm not even sure how I pronounced that right, but she gets ready for her date with Melvin, where Jody asks her respectfully why she likes to date thugs instead of nice guys. Where this grown ass woman who is touching 50 gives the most childish response. She has to date thugs because she needs someone who can deal with her. Sounds like how most dangerously toxic relationships begin. She also states that Jody's dad was a thug, which has to be the worst argument because where is that nigga? This seems to insinuate that he is no longer exists or is in jail. Nigga's probably just a deadbeat who did probably what most thugs in the hood does. Ran off somewhere to be irresponsible. Jody calls her out on why someone has to be a thug just to put up with her, which she claims Melvin isn't a thug, even though she was defending him like he was a thug. He's a nice guy. Yeah, I'm sure, the guy with the 187 tattoo is just a sweetheart. You can see Jody communicate with Melvin where he's 100% cordial and nice to him. Unfortunately, Melvin keeps dropping subtle hints about how he's really like that. He's really thugged out. And I mean unbelievably thugged out. During this convo, Jody briefly talks about how his brother that got killed because his mother threw him out over her last boyfriend, which I feel like is something about Juanita's character that is glossed over during this movie. Juanita is a horrible mother. When she's when she dated a man who was a killer named Henry, this led to conflict with her son, and she decided to choose her man over her own son, which says a lot about her. It gets even crazier because it's later insinuated that Henry also would beat Juanita. So she pretty much put her piece of shit killer boyfriend who beats her above her own son, leading to his death. And we don't even really see her feel too guilty about it or have any long lasting trauma from it. Only really Jody has long lasting trauma from that situation. I say where Jody completely starts disliking Melvin is during the discussion where Melvin gets Juanita a new TV, where Melvin 100% admits to Jody that he's a killer. He's low key even sounds like he's proud of himself as he almost fondly remembers his past. He doesn't seem like a man who is ashamed of who he was. In a way, he's kind of sunning Jody too. Like, yeah, you might be young and a bit wild and dumb, but you're no killer boy. After that, Jody confronts his mother, asking her why she's dating a man who is a killer similar to Henry, to which he starts gaslighting the hell out of Jody, talking about how Melvin's changed his life around and how he could actually learn from Melvin because she doesn't have to make him go and get a job unlike Jody. Also, keep in mind, Jody is 20. Melvin is easily twice his age and just now getting his life in order. Like, hey, at least Jody took the initiative to start his little business or whatever, even if it is boosting. But hey, he's a 20-year-old with a criminal record with who knows how much education. Gotta start somewhere. I'd say Jody in his 20s is well above where Melvin was in his late 30s. But hey, mom's gotta put down her own son to prop up this retired thug she just met. Says everything you need to know about Juanita. Jody asks her if she's gonna kick him out now. You can see Jody is still holding onto trauma from what happened to his brother. You'd think Juanita would take this time to comfort and assure her 20-year-old son that that's not the case. Instead, she's like, hey, instead of kicking you out, how about you just leave? Worst mother ever. She seems more annoyed by the fact that she has to keep being reminded that she kicked her son out, leading to his death, than guilty about it. She goes on to ask Jody why doesn't he go get a place with Yvette and why he's so afraid to grow up and be a man. You know what's annoying about this scene? Notice how Juanita only ever wants her sons out the house when she has a man. I imagine she's one of those single mothers who never had a man around, so she low-key treated her sons almost like they were her little husbands. But now when it's inconvenient for her, she's annoyed by it. She had no problem with Jody living with her from what we can see until Melvin comes into the picture. And she certainly had no problem living with her mother until she eventually died and Juanita inherited her house. But we're clearly dealing with rules for thee and not for me. After effectively being gaslit by his mom, Jody starts gathering information on Melvin. And to our surprise, the man with the 187 tattoo has a dark past. Jody goes out of his way to track down Melvin's son and finds out that Melvin doesn't really have a relationship with his own children due to the fact he used to beat on his baby mother. So that's two correlations between Melvin and Henry, Juanita's ex. She clearly has a type, I'll give her that. Instead of explaining how he has remorse for his actions, Melvin decides to choke out Jody while telling him pretty much how he'd violate him if it wasn't for his mom. Can you really be mad at someone for not wanting their mom to date an ex-killer slash domestic abuser? Like, if you really, I don't think committing violence on her son really does much to show how you become a changed man. But whatever. The final scene that convinced me that Juanita must really be the secret villain of this movie is when she wakes Jody up accusing him of planting cannabis in her garden. She immediately blames Jody and doesn't even halfway entertain the idea that Melvin could have done it, because he wouldn't do no stupid shit like that. Only Jody would. Like, this scene right here shows you how delusional Juanita is in regards to Melvin's character. What about him makes you think that he wouldn't do anything like this? But in her eyes, Melvin can do no wrong, even though he's an ex-convict. It has to be that fuck up Jody, not the outstanding citizen that is Melvin. So they wait for Melvin to get home in order to confront him. In Melvin's defense, though, he immediately takes responsibility for planting the weed, to which Juanita just kind of immediately forgives him. Now, here's where some legendary gaslighting begins. Jody calls out Juanita for instantly forgiving Melvin, but when she thought it was him, she was on the verge of throwing him out. And Juanita has the nerve to get mad at Jody for rightfully calling her out. The least Shorty could do is apologize for falsely accusing my homeboy and besmirching his name. But, we're dealing with a hood black mother, so you know how that goes. She tells Jody she's getting real tired of his beef with Melvin. Like, ma'am, he don't want to be cool with your wife-beating killer of a boyfriend, and that ain't his fault. He has morals. She says something interesting, though. She tells Jody, hey, I don't say nothing about all the whores you run around with, so I need the same respect. There's so much wrong with this statement. First off, you're his mother. Shouldn't you maybe be saying something? The boy is 20 years old with 2 kids by 2 different women. And that's only because he got the other ones aborted. And that still doesn't stop him from cheating on his faithful girlfriend who loves him. Maybe you should say something and offer him some guidance, that thing mothers do. Regardless, running around with hoes is way different than constantly hooking up with killers and inviting them to your home. Like, her whole rant is supposed to be putting Jody in his place and showing how childish and immature he is, but really Juanita is the one coming off as childish to me. Melvin Big Head Ass decides to jump in and tag team Jody like, bro, you're not in a better place to lecture my boy. He goes on this rant about how Jody has Oedipus complex, and but I want to ask Melvin, why do you think he has this? They raise these young men like this, then bash them for when it's inconvenient for them. Jody decides I'm not finna take this from some ex-convict murderer and pushes Melvin, initiating a fight where Melvin beats the brakes off of Jody. Now, some might say Jody deserves that ass whooping. Eh, maybe the first punch, but everything after that is ridiculous. And put yourself in the perspective of a mother who is watching her child get seriously beat up and injured by her boyfriend. How would you feel? How would any halfway decent mother feel? All Jody did was push him. You're a grown man twice his age and size, and y'all just threw him under the bus over some weed you planted. You're not the victim here. Now, where do I begin in regards to Juanita, though? So, remember the last time she kicked her son out because of her man, and he ended up dead. You think this would influence her actions on how she handles this situation, but it really doesn't. As soon as the man who could have seriously injured or done worse to her son threatens to leave, she damn near has a panic attack, begging him not to leave. Jody calls her out on putting a man before her own child, something she constantly does, and her response is to tell him, "You are not a child." That's what she yells to her son. Man, 20 is a funny age because one day you'll be a grown man, the next day you're a baby. It's whatever is convenient for your parents, but adult or not, stop putting these murderers above your children. Jody is mind blown by his mother and decides to leave. Keep in mind, Jody has ops out there. He could easily die, and her response to this is, hey, you have your own life. What a cold thing to say to your son. You think a mother who has went through this before would at least try and convince him to stay. I mean, at this point, Melvin had calmed down and admitted he messed up. He fouled up. Gotta love the censored version of this movie, by the way. But whatever, Jody and Juanita eventually do reconcile after Melvin stops Jody from offing himself, realizing that he might actually be trying to be a better person. But it's just not satisfying for me. I'd say Juanita she's a representation of the worst type of single mothers that raise infantilized black men who will kill you over sets and street signs. But that's all I gotta say for now.